hard to believe that the Switch 2 is already 6 months old. It took so long to get here, and now I've basically broken it in for half a year. And after 6 months, you start to see what Nintendo really has to offer, and how this actually fits into your life. So there are a few things I want to talk about: the console itself, the games, and everything surrounding the Switch 2 right now. Any discussion or talking points, especially as we head into the holiday season. First things first, how's my boy holding up? What does it physically look like? Well, first of all, it turns on, so that's always a good start. I've noticed over the last few months that certain parts of the Switch are starting to wear down a little bit. Things aren't feeling as new anymore. The plastics on the console was matte textured at first, but now they're getting a little bit of a glossy shine around the buttons, and this sticks for me just using it. It's all cosmetic, but hey, this is what actual use looks like. Speaking of cosmetic damage, my kickstand has gotten even more scratches and scuffs on it, and because it's made out of metal, these things are a lot more noticeable. One thing to note is that I probably put the Switch 2 through more abuse than the average consumer. I'm surprised this thing even works at all. More recently, I've noticed something I like to call Joy-Con jiggle. If you own a Switch 1 for any amount of time, you already know that after a while, the Joy-Cons would start wiggling on the rails. And I really thought the Switch 2 wouldn't have this because it has a stronger connection. However, this is just not the case. I'm starting to feel a little bit more jiggle after all. That's not an issue while playing, but it's definitely noticeable when I'm just walking around with it in my little hands. You can just kind of feel it. You can probably see it a little bit too. Again, not a big deal, just something I noticed that wasn't there when I first got it. My biggest concern so far is actually the sticks. There's already a tiny chunk out of my left analog stick chipped off somehow, and sometimes, usually when I'm putting a sus accessory on, I find that the rubber piece under the stick can fold in on itself after a while. Again, not a problem yet, but stay tuned. Maybe my 1-year review, I'll really expose the durability of this thing. Other than that though, it's holding up pretty well. So good job, Switch 2, you're durable. But next up, I think it's really important that we talk about what you actually do on the system, and that's the playing games. Last time I reviewed this console, I really blasted Nintendo. It felt like some games weren't done before release, some were too expensive, and there was just a lot of drama around game key cards, paid DLC, and everything in between. But after 6 months, I think I finally have a little bit of a different perspective on this now. So yes, let's talk about the games now. So Mario Kart World, this was the big launch game for the system. And honestly, I've pretty much stopped playing it entirely. I'll boot it up sometimes, but until Nintendo adds a little bit more content or gives me a reason to come back, I'm basically done with it. It kind of sucks to say, but that's where I'm at. Then we got Donkey Kong Bonanza. This is a little bit different because it actually has a full story you can complete. And usually when I finish a game like this, I don't really replay it for a while. And that's exactly where I'm sitting. The DLC was fun, the story was strong, and I'm really happy with how much content was there, but I finished the game. So I'm done playing it. That's how it works. This is one of those games that is just a really good experience for the short amount of time you're playing it, which makes it really worth it. It's a really fun game, and there's a lot of content to it. Next up, we have Dragon Drive. It was fun when it launched, but I haven't really touched it much since. I really think it should have been a little bit cheaper to make it more accessible. It's not bad, I just don't see myself ever going back to it. Then there's Pokemon Legends ZA, and if you've literally seen any of my videos, you already know how I feel about this. Like a lot of people, it's got the classic rushed Pokemon game energy. No voice acting, rough textures, cut corners everywhere. It does look way better on the Switch 2 compared to the Switch 1, and I really enjoyed the battle system upgrades, but I've kind of stopped playing it as well, and I don't really feel any urge to return right now. 2 weeks after Pokemon, we got Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and this is where I actually started feeling a bit better about Nintendo's output. This game felt complete, just like Donkey Kong. I had a moment of, oh yeah, maybe the Switch 2 releases aren't actually that bad. It was a solid game, and it was the first time I genuinely enjoyed a Hyrule Warriors title. I even did more than just the main story. That should tell you something. But like Bonanza, once you finish it, you're kind of done. And I'm done. And by the way, I know I said I was going to go over all the games I am playing. I just want to give you a quick update with all the first party games, because that's probably the games that you care about most. But 2 weeks after Hyrule Warriors, we got Kirby Air Riders. Oh my goodness gracious. And this is where things fully turned around for me. This is when I started to realize Nintendo was delivering a genuinely strong lineup. Just like Age of Imprisonment and Donkey Kong, Kirby Air Riders feels done. And they went above and beyond for what is basically a Kirby racing game. I have a full review of this game on my channel, and you probably already know that this is my favorite Switch 2 release from Nintendo so far. And I still play it constantly. After 6 months, this is easily the game I've enjoyed the most. And at the time of recording this, Metroid Prime 4 literally just released. And I'd say so far out of all the first party games released, this is one game that really leans into the more hardcore audience. If you're into Metroid, this is a great release. And the fact that we got it literally 6 months into the console's life cycle is kind of insane. The games are obviously a big factor, but I've still heard people say the Switch 2 has no games. Are we even seeing the same Switch 2 right now? And I think some people really expected more to launch right away for some reason, but the console hasn't even been out that long. For 6 months, I think it's important to look back and take a gander at how many solid games we've actually gotten so far. And if this is any indication of how the Switch 2 will be supported long term, I think we really just need to stop saying that there's nothing to play. If you're a fan of Pokemon games, racing games, action-adventure games, 3D platformers, Metroidvanias, the Switch 2 has something for you. And I'm just talking first-party games. I haven't even touched the third-party stuff yet. But before we even talk about third-party games, we need to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2 editions. Because Nintendo has been padding out the launch lineup with these Switch 2 editions. Most of these aren't necessary, but they're nice little upgrades. Usually improved graphics, sometimes content updates, and sometimes both, like Kirby and the Forgotten Land. That Switch 2 edition was goated. Goated with the sauce, even. Sheesh. These upgrades cost between $10 and $20, and honestly, I think they're worth revisiting if you're into that game specifically. I've seen people complain about the price of these upgrades, and while I agree some of them feel a little too pricey, like Jamboree for a multitude of reasons, you really just have to look at them individually. Only buy the ones you care about. Something I've seen so much on the Switch 2 internets is that people complain about them as a whole, and if you don't like the one, simply don't buy it. I don't really know what else to say. You don't need to buy these upgrades to play it on the Switch 2. You can still play the Switch 1 version. And you know what? My brain also thinks, hey, at least they didn't resell us the entire game for the Switch 2 or you had to rebuy the whole thing. That would just be absolutely nonsense. That'd be cuckoo. But after 6 months, I think Nintendo is actually starting to listen to some of the fan feedback here. I could just be insane, but it's worth noting that the Animal Crossing Switch 2 edition is only $5. That's the cheapest upgrade so far. And it even includes Switch 2 exclusive features like camera support and 4K resolution. No 60 frames per second for some reason, but hey, 4K for $5 extra, I don't think it's really that bad or worth complaining about. Because again, you can still play the Switch 1 version on the Switch 2. You're not really missing much. I'm honestly happier that Nintendo is going back to Switch 1 games and giving them upgrades instead of just ignoring them. It's a substantial reason to upgrade. And even if you don't get the Switch 2 editions, Switch 1 games run better anyway thanks to backwards compatibility. You'll see a lot of faster load times and more stable frame rates and all that good stuff. But anyways, I think it's now time to talk about the third-party releases. After 6 months, we're seeing more and more ports, and some of them are fantastic, while others are not as good. Take SpongeBob Tides of the Titans. I know, it's a deep take. This looks fantastic, even has quality and performance modes, but the performance mode frame rate is a little janky. Then you gotta look at like Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. It looks fine, but it's under 1080p and runs only at 30 frames per second. Or sports games. These are also 30 frames per second, even though the fields are tiny. They look good, but they could have easily pushed this to 60 frames per second, right? This is where I need to just be real for a second. I need to look you in the eyes and just be honest with you. A lot of these Switch 2 ports are still lazy. And I genuinely thought the Switch 2 would kill that era of lazy Switch ports, but I don't know why I assumed that. The Switch 2 is stronger, but it's still not a PS5, but even then, some of them are unnecessarily lazy. On the other hand, you've got some really good ports, like Cyberpunk, which looks gorgeous and takes full advantage of the Switch 2's hardware, or Fortnite, which looks great and uses something like mouse mode. So yes, it's hit or miss. It really just depends on the developer and how much money they're willing to invest to port the Switch 2 version. I do think that we'll see way more games come over compared to the Switch 1 era, but the Switch 2 is still dealing with some lil bro treatment, getting questionable ports just because developers don't put in the effort. That being said, I still choose to buy a lot of these games on Switch 2 even though I have other platforms, mainly because of handheld mode, but also because I do this YouTube thing, and it gives me just a little bit more things to talk about, especially on my second channel where I talk a lot about these third-party games. So check that out after this, go subscribe, and say I sent you from this. Overall, when it comes to games, there's a lot of them, and the catalog just keeps growing. I'm really hoping that as time goes on, more of these titles release on Switch 2 at the same time as other platforms, like Borderlands 3. They didn't have that game ready in time, so they just delayed the Switch 2 release. Or Sonic Crossworlds. That game came out later on the Switch 2, when it released on other platforms a couple months earlier. This is just a thing that happens, and the Switch versions drop a little bit later. But hey, at least they're here. What would I have done without Squirrel with a Gun? I would have been completely disheveled. And honestly, I'm feeling a lot better about Nintendo's long-term releases if they keep giving us complete games instead of half-baked ones that get finished months later. Mario Kart World, I'm looking at you. Mario Kart literally just got the ability to select specific items in a race and the P-Switch tracker like 6 months later. Are you freaking kidding me? Okay, I swear I'm flaming Mario Kart World in every single video I do, but that is a very good example of a game that comes out when it's not complete. Now, how does the Switch 2 enhance these games? What console features am I still using on a daily basis, if I'm using them at all? We've got things like game chat, the camera, mouse mode, all the unique stuff baked into the system itself. Now, I think we first got to talk about game chat. How often do I actually use it? Well, not that often at all, actually. I used it a lot at launch when I played Mario Kart a lot, and actually, you know what, I have used it a little bit when Kirby Air Riders released, but other than that, when I play games like Fortnite, for example, there's a lot of other people that play with me that are on different platforms. It becomes pretty much impossible to use game chat the way Nintendo wants you to unless the other people have a Switch 2, which I'm just not seeing that many people have a Switch 2 yet. It's too new, I think. That being said, I think it's pretty cool how some in-game game chats work with the Switch 2 as well, like Fortnite. There's a built-in voice chat, and the Switch 2 uses the console's mic, so I can actually talk to other people across different platforms. But overall, the C button is just a button that exists for me right now. Yeah. Now, what about the Nintendo Switch 2 camera? Once again, I don't really use it that much. I tried it with Welcome Tour and Mario Kart at launch, but it's just kind of pointless now. There aren't many games that use it in a meaningful way, and honestly, how could they? This feature is just very experimental right now. There's just no purpose aside from game chat, which, like I said, I'm not using very much. But then we have mouse mode. This was the feature I was most excited about before launch. Our brains went wild with imagining how shooters would use this, and yeah, it works great for first-person shooter games, like when I'm playing Fortnite, and I actually somewhat enjoy using it. But the problem is, it's just not that comfortable, like drag and drive. I played that for an hour and a half, and it felt like my arms were going to implode. Fortnite works better, but it's still uncomfortable for longer sessions, and using mouse mode makes it a little more difficult to actually reach some buttons, navigate menus. It's all just a little bit more annoying. And yes, Nintendo says you can play mouse mode on your lap or the couch, and you can, but I don't find it as precise. Maybe it's because my legs are a little bit hairy, or maybe it's because of the cloth on my couch or whatever, but you pretty much need a mouse pad. So whenever I want to play mouse mode on my couch, I usually just have to bring my mouse pad over and call it a day. Still, it can be a little bit finicky. Mouse mode is obviously one of the biggest things that make the Switch 2 unique, but right now, we're just not getting much use out of it. And even when we do, it's not the most comfortable option. Nintendo used it best in Welcome Tour and now the new Metroid Prime, but really just how comfortable it is my biggest problem. It's just not that comfortable. I really think that Nintendo should have given us some sort of accessory for this, and here's my theory. Before the next Splatoon game, I bet Nintendo will release an official accessory for mouse mode, either an attachable mouse add-on or a full new controller. That's just what I'm assuming, or at least I hope so. So what else about the Switch 2 do we have that makes it unique? Well, I gotta say, this screen. It's really grown on me. The amount of screen you get with such a thin device is amazing. It's not OLED, so it's not as vibrant as the Switch 1 OLED, but the size alone makes it such a good upgrade. And if you watched my video on the Xbox handheld, that console really puts into perspective how much a bigger screen adds to a handheld experience. Also, magnet check. I still love them. Also, here's a unique take that I don't think I've heard anybody talk about. I love the cartridge slot. Compared to the OLED, this is seriously way easier to get games out. My nails are a little bit shorter, and when the Switch OLED was a thing, the cartridge slot was so difficult for me to open. And here I can just open it with my skin. It's a huge dub. And now it's time for a storage update. If you've seen my previous review videos, you already know that this was an issue for me within the first month. The console comes with 256 gigabytes on board, and I added an additional 256 gigabytes Express SD card, and yes, it's still gotten to the point where almost anytime I download a game, especially if it's even a little chunky, I'm needing to delete something else off the console. Now, I definitely play and download more games than the average user, but honestly, even if I didn't, I think this would eventually become a problem anyways. I've been trying to get my hands on a 1 terabyte Express SD card, but I just haven't been able to find one yet, and they're also just kind of expensive, so I don't really know if I want to do that yet. I can make do for now. This problem also comes from the fact that a lot of games aren't actually physical anymore, because, you know, there's actually game key cards now. So I'm downloading way more games than I ever did on my Switch 1. Game key cards, how are we feeling about them? How is that going 6 months later? Even when I buy a game physically, yes, I'm counting game key cards as physical, say what you want about them, but I'm holding them in my hands, so they're physical. Argue all you want, I don't know what to say. You might remember how much drama this caused, and still causes, in the community, with everyone arguing about how games aren't actually physical anymore. And oh my goodness, I'm so tired of hearing about it. If you want the game, buy the game. This is still a way I can collect and resell. I get why people don't like it. Yes, it's dumb, and yes, I don't prefer it either, but at least we got something. Also, other consoles have already done the exact same thing without us even noticing. I think because Nintendo gave it a name, people know to flame it. And if anything, the game keycard situation is actually getting a little worse now, because we just got an announcement that for the first time ever, a Nintendo game itself is going to be on a game keycard, and that's with Pokemon Pokopia. This sparked a whole new conversation about whether this is the new norm, or what this even means going forward. Whatever, you probably know my opinion by now. I don't really care anymore. The real issue is the amount of storage these downloads take. I think that's really the big thing here. So like many other people, do I have buyer's remorse for the Switch 2? Because yes, that is something I've seen going all around the internet lately. People get tons of views saying how they have buyer's remorse from the Switch 2. Do I personally? Well, no. but I can see where a lot of people would, especially in the first little bit of a console generation, and I think you could say that for any console generation. When you buy a console early in its life cycle, there are just fewer games, and that instant gratification just isn't the same as buying it a year later when tons of stuff has been released. And yes, the prices are a little higher this generation, and if you bought it at launch and you weren't a big Mario Kart World fan or a Welcome Tour fan, I can absolutely see how this would get old fast, especially with how similar the console still feels UI-wise. It doesn't feel as much of a generational leap as something like the PS4 to the PS5. But overall, after 6 months with the Switch 2, I'm still really happy with it. But if you bought it at launch expecting your life to change overnight, I get the disappointment. But for me, I think it's doing exactly what I want it to do: handheld gaming with better performance, better visuals, and way more potential long-term than the Switch 1. We already have a handful of really solid first-party games, more third-party support than I ever expected this early, and Nintendo has been updating older titles with Switch 2 editions way more than I thought they would. And if this momentum keeps up, I think the next 6 months, and honestly the next couple of years, are going to make this console absolutely stacked. No buyer's remorse here. I like the Switch 2. Let me know your biggest Switch 2 complaint, or your favorite thing about it in the comments. And of course, if you want more Switch 2 videos, like and subscribe and do all that YouTube stuff. Also check out the second channel, and thank you to members for supporting the channel above and beyond. I love you all. Have a good rest of your day. Check out some of these other videos. See you later.